All right, we're back for another episode for All We Know. This episode it's kind of important to me. It's something that used to be taboo, and now it's kind of, the norm. Mental health is really, really big, and I'm glad that I'm able to speak about it freely, and Black masculinity is something that we could dive into later, but it's kind of cool that we have this opportunity. So to my right, I have Jasmine.
Hello.
The homie from D6, former D6.
Yes.
And I have Keandria. That I'm actually fortunate to have two Black women talk about mental health because I feel like you guys talk about a lot more, and which is needed. But yeah, man, thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah,
this is dope. I kind of wanted to start with like how you guys grew up, because I think that's kind of where some things happen, like during your childhood, and like how you grow up, and that's kind of how it shapes how you develop and look at mental health. So, Jasmine, what about you?
So I feel like I grew up in a little bit of a unique situation because my family, my mom and my grandmother, like kind of shared the mom role when I was little. And, my dad, he's around and he, helped out here and there, but it was mainly mom and my grandma. Okay. And they were both big proponents of going to therapy, like at a young age. Like I know that I went through some stuff when I was younger, like my mother, she was in recovery, so she's a member of NA. Right. And so I lived with my grandmother for a little bit, for like a year and a half. And my grandmother made sure that I saw like a child psychologist, child therapist, just to make sure that, I was okay in that time.
Wow. Okay.
So, I've kind of grown up with a positive outlook on therapy as far as my mom and my grandma goes. Now, it's funny because my dad is, he's a little bit more like religious. And so he's more of like the pray about it, pray, that kind of frame of mind. Yeah, exactly. So talking to him about that kind of stuff, or like even where like now as an adult, like I have a therapist that I talk to, just because I believe like you maintain the outside, you go to the doctor for other parts of you, so why not see one for your mind?
Exactly.
But there's definitely a difference in tone for like when I talk to my dad about that kind of stuff versus like
you feel like you kind of gotta step on eggshells a little bit.
Little bit. Like I pull back a little bit just because I'm like I already know how you're gonna respond to this. But I do appreciate growing up with an open mind about therapy and not having it feel like, oh, that means that something's wrong with you. Like, that kind of thing. And because I also like went to church, like my mom and my grandma had me in church every Sunday. But they were all about that balance.
Man, you're extremely fortunate to start so early.
Not common.
You're probably very well-rounded human being.
I like to think so, but we all have our stuff.
That's wow. What about you?
I'm actually on the extreme opposing end of what you said. So I grew up in a single-parent household. My father was killed when I was 2. So I met him, but I'm sure I don't remember. The heart of the Bible Belt in the Mississippi Delta. So it was just like church, home, work, school. Like that's all it was. A lot of childhood trauma, even like generationally, that it's like, okay, well, you don't talk about it, it just didn't happen. So that not being able to really vocalize that vulnerability, and so growing up into thinking that, okay, like I had to be tough, and this part of me is soft, I'm just going to pretend it never happened, out of sight, out of mind. And I can see that, before I started my healing journey, like 5 or 6 short years ago, I used to have that same mindset. Now, like, I'm gonna block your number, I'm gonna delete you, I'm out of sight, out of mind. I'm just gonna pretend it never happened. And one thing that I notice now is things it's a constant journey. Like I keep remembering things, and it's because I just put it in the back of my mind, like it never happened, and it did happen. So definitely, you couldn't talk about therapy. Even now, my sister is actually a practicing therapist. She has her own practice, so she made my first appointment for me. We both had to essentially, like, she's in Washington, D.C., I'm here. Most of my family is still in Mississippi, so most of them are still very like, well, what do you need for you to go to church? Like, you could just pray about it, or that didn't happen, or if it happened, why are you just talking about it? Or, you know, it's very that.
Right.
So it's those conversations I still can't even have, or I just don't have for the sake of myself. Like, I ain't gonna talk about it with you. I'm just gonna talk about it with my therapist. Yeah.
That's tough, man. And I was listening to a philosopher recently, Simone de Beauvoir, and she said, you know, you can't, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you can't ignore your subjectivity and you can't ignore your objectivity. Like, and obviously you can't ignore your emotions, because in essence that kind of, you know, doesn't, basically you're saying you don't exist. And I feel like kind of like you, I was in the Black household. You know, if something happens, you just, you know, put it in the back of your mind, and, you know, it just never happened. But then as you get older, it pops up, and it pops up in actions. It pops up in thought,
sometimes
or like
random.
Or you just just go to church and, you know, just pray, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's not I don't know if it's a long-term solution.
Yeah, it's not always that simple.
And some people will say, you know, just read books about how to train your mind. That's repressing too.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's tough to kind of like, you know, have the back and forth of, okay, do I do this? Do I do this? But therapy is something, actually, I have not gone to therapy before, but, well, I did marriage counseling. I don't know if that counts, but
it does. It's a form of therapy.
But I've always wanted to, because, you know, there's things that happen in my life that I want to, you know, I feel like I should address because I see them, and I might not act on them. I was like, why did I just think about that? Or like, why did I do that? And, you know, I kind of just go back and forth. How do you guys like do the self-care now? Like, you know, obviously you go to therapy, but are there like regimens that you guys have, or?
So because a lot of like my own personal trauma is rooted kind of around anger, I go to boxing every week. Sometimes you just need to punch some shit.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes you do.
You just need to hit something. Some people let it out with just screaming. Some people let it out with even violence. I just want to punch a bag. And then I take
a bag in the person.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Go to jail. But and then I do one mandatory day off work a month where I don't check an email. I hardly check my phone. I just don't. That's what I got to do for myself to keep, because I work with kids. So that boxing and everything, you know.
Can't put your hands on the kids.
Right. Charge. So yeah, that's what I do.
Nice.
Okay. What do you do, Joe?
I like to practice yoga.
Okay.
I feel like I'm a little bit of a hippie on the inside, because like I love yoga. I have 2 dogs that are like, they just really help when I feel anxious, just kind of having them around.
Yeah.
Marijuana.
Okay.
Whether you want to leave that in or not,
it calms people. It calms people.
Because I definitely realized as an adult, like, anxiety is something that I've had to deal with more as an adult, that I feel like is something as a result of how I grew up. Because I was definitely the straight A kid, like tried to do the best in everything and that kind of thing. So like as an adult, I feel like now I'm just like, if I'm not working at a 10 all the time, and I'm just like, okay, I gotta make sure that I'm doing well on this and doing well on that, then I feel like, you know, I'm not working to my full potential.
Yeah.
So that's that combination of stuff. And then I've tried meditation, and I'll do it here or there, but honestly, my mind is hard to clear it. To just clear it.
I can't do it. I just have to have my own form of meditation.
Like
journaling. Just call it that.
Yeah.
There's other forms, like, but the whole, like, you know, just I can't do it.
Let your
Yeah.
mind be still. It's never still.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I think the closest I come to meditating is like during yoga practice, because
Yeah.
there are like certain times where it's like, okay, now you just need to be still and let your mind rest, and I can do that for a couple
And
minutes,
then you'll be like, oh,
and it's like, oh shoot,
Like,
dinner, or
right?
you know,
Like,
like just
laundry.
did I
whatever.
turn the oven off? Like, did I do like? There's so much stuff that I can never do it. But I do have things that put my mind at ease, or like I won't have my mind going like 100 ways a second. Like I play soccer, so that helps like physical and mental, because that's kind of like my release, because I've been playing since I was like 5. So that helps. Music, love music, but it's all, you have to balance, because I hate when people say, you go to therapy, like what's wrong with you? Because and I kind of related to this. If you have a car, you take your car to the mechanic so it doesn't break down.
Yep.
You feel me? So
Exactly.
that's kind of how I relate, taking time for yourself and focusing on mental health before you snap on somebody.
Yeah.
Before, like, you project your feelings on somebody else. And I just hate when people say that, what's
Yeah.
wrong with you?
Yeah.
I hate that. But I kind of feel like that's how we, as Black people, kind of associate it. And that's kind of what I wanted to go into, is that, do we as Black people, is it still a negative thing to talk about mental health? Like, because I feel like it's always considered weak, or, like and I hate that, but are we getting better at it?
I don't know. I mean, I can speak to as far as like women and my girlfriends, because I do definitely feel like there's a difference between the way this talks about like men versus women. And I know like my girlfriends and I, like, we'll talk about it, just like it'll just
Like
be part of the
it's nothing.
conversation. Like it's just like, girl, guess what my therapist told me, blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
it's no big deal. But I've straight up had relationships in, because I was like, I could see in the person I was dating, I was like, there are things that you need to talk to somebody about and handle about yourself that are impacting this relationship, and he would not do it, because it was just like, I don't need that, blah blah blah, there's nothing wrong with me, just like what you were
This
saying.
is who I am.
Yeah. That's,
So
oh man, that's tough. I've seen it on the flip side too. Like I have to say this. There's a difference, if we're talking about dating. There's a difference between dating a woman that had a relationship with their father, not all the time, but a relationship with their father, versus not.
No, I agree.
Or like disrespected their father, not, man.
same for men and their moms. Like same for men and their moms.
It comes out.
You can tell.
Because if a man and his mom don't get along, like, it seems like he just hates women.
That's the woman that brought him into the world,
The interesting thing is, I actually was talking about this with a coworker. Like, I work with kids, 8th grade, and we say all the time, before we even delve into their chart and look at them, we can tell which ones have a father figure and which ones don't, and which ones like respect their mom and which ones don't. Just that presence of like you being a teacher in the room and you call a male teacher in the room, like you can tell the difference. You can tell who has that structure.
Do you think that, man, like the social media doesn't help either?
No.
And then that's another thing too. If we're gonna like bounce off of social media, you have Black trauma, and it's so easily accessible now. Like we're seeing people get killed at the hands of cops. Like, and I feel like. Are Black people like numb to that now? I mean, I still feel it, but also it's just like another one.
Yeah.
Go make breakfast. Like it's almost like, and that's not healthy either. So that's why I feel like everybody's gonna need it eventually, because that kind of stuff affects you. I kind of feel like it shows up in relationships. It shows up like in the workplace, but for y'all as Black women, I don't know if it's getting better in the workplace for y'all, but I'm sure that has an effect on your mental health too, right?
All the time. It's almost like I work in a predominantly Black a predominantly white area. So I have to always tread lightly between like my mental, like doing what's best for my mental health and what's best for me, even though that may portray to them as angry or aggressive, which is how they might see me anyway. Like even if you like set a boundary that you're not finna cross this line, you're not finna get overly close to me, you're not finna whatever, then that reads as angry. Or so it's not getting better. And then you have to get like reclusive and stay to yourself, which isn't healing at all. You're just like going in your little bubble. And it's like, so I don't personally, like, not in education. I don't know, any outside of that, but I don't think so.
What about you in the field and the cameras and the lights and the...
I don't know. Like, production's interesting because I feel like it's usually when I'm in a room, I'm either one of the only black people in the room or like the only black woman in the room. Like, I'm like the only in some form in a lot of cases. So just knowing how to navigate around just all different types of people who have different levels of exposure to people who don't look like them and that kind of thing is just interesting. And then outside of that, like something that I've struggled with on and off throughout my career is like imposter syndrome, which is a different type of like.
I just learned what that is.
Yeah, which is just like, how did I get here? Do I belong here? Yep. Somebody's gonna find me out and kick me out, and like, and those feelings really can kind of creep up, especially when you are the only person that looks like you in a room. It's like, well, damn, should I be here? Like,
imposter syndrome is interesting. Because I feel like as black people, we are just as smart, we're just as capable. But to even have that thought, because I don't feel like white people feel like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't think that they struggle with it on the same level.
I think that they feel, this just happened to me. Like, I think that they feel entitled to the same things. Like, oh, well, you got it, and I have to have it too. So... Prime example, I've been kind of dealing with a back and forth in my leadership with this white woman with her doctorate degree, and she is just real high and mighty on her house on the river in Roswell, what I'm saying? Yeah. And I drive all the way up here, and I'm the only black teacher on that, and I'm younger, and I'm tech savvy, and I relate to the kids, and I just recently was recommended for a job with the district, changing around some stuff on the back end. Thanks. And so I was going to keep it to myself because I know that these are not my friends, they're my coworkers. Right. But, administration congratulated me, so they brought it up in a meeting, and then lo and behold, she sent an email to see if there were any openings, because like you got the position that I surely should get into, and so
maybe got lost in my spam or something.
right. And so happened. Literally, I had a meeting today to go over like what the plan is, what the homework is per se, and like she like hijacked my meeting. She was in it, and she kept referring to us as we can collaborate, we can do this, and I'm like we who? So it's almost like I'm actually talking about this in my next session because I was on my high horse that I got this shit, and then now it's like I can't even have this because you can't let me have it, right? And for a second when I got it, I was just like, damn, I got that, like imposter syndrome. I got that, and then now it's just like, okay, well maybe she is contributing to that, like, oh well, you ain't nothing, and I can send an email and get it too, and it contributes to my mental health. Like, it actually been fucking me up, like because it just happened. So I'm like, okay, and it adds to it. And sometimes you work with people who understand imposter syndrome because they got to deal with that. You can't be too vulnerable. You can't, because we're people of color, and then you got people that contribute to, well, you ain't nothing, and I'm gonna remind you that you ain't nothing, like she's doing, or like people back home still do, that just, what did you do to deserve that, or you go to therapy, you're crazy, or it's just all kind of, it comes from the same like all those conversations seem to come from the same stem to me.
Yeah.
The same backbone, the same Russell Wilson is corny. Like that same
Oh,
shit.
God.
It's built from the same,
Yeah.
you know, come from the same cloth, in my opinion.
And I feel like, just piggybacking off that Russell Wilson thing, I feel like that's also, we are so conditioned to think a certain way, especially black people, to even have that thought that somebody's doing positive that they're corny.
That they're corny.
That is some wild
It's wild.
Exactly.
man.
And that came from a
Positivity.
black man too, right? Like that was like, and I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
How?
Sure. We have
How
a
does-
relationship
how does-
episode coming, but that I just had, you brought it up, so I had to say something. But that's some wild stuff. But my question is, when something like that happens to you, how do you handle it? How do you, like, within yourself? I'm not necessarily talking about addressing with her, but how do you handle, like, if you're so upset? You know, do you talk to somebody? You have to instantly talk to somebody. You got to go for a walk. You gotta go to kickboxing. What you got to do?
I feel like a part of me still does the retreat because that's the safest thing.
For all parties.
Like a part of me still gotta like step back and just
Yeah.
isolate and think about what I'm gonna do next.
Yeah.
And then another part of me is just like I have a fur baby too, little Zeus.
Fur baby.
Right? And so I'll go home with Zeus. I'll take an extended walk, or I'll let my friends know. Like I actually text a friend today, like, hey, you know, I ain't ghosting. I'm just I had a couple days, man. You know, whatever. So a part of it is just still that reclusivity. Like that's, or I binge eat some food or something, which ain't healthy.
Sometimes it's got to be done.
Gotta order the pizza and eat the whole
prevent you
thing.
from getting them handcuffs thrown on you.
Right.
It's got to be done. Yeah, I still I always have to go back to just how we are as a community, and there's some people that just don't agree with the mental health, and it really sucks because, you know, it's so beneficial to so many people, you know. But one thing I do want to kind of piggyback on is, do you feel like, with me, I know there was, but do you feel like there was a moment in time where you kind of, for lack of better phrases, saw the light? I was like, oh, I need to start getting my life in order. Like my mental health is really affecting who I am as a person, and I really got to get that together. With me, it was more of it was like with my dating life, and just kind of like what I was going out all the time. You know, I was drinking, like I'm talking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm out. Like, but I felt like I was trying to fill a void. And there was just one day I was just like, okay. I just woke up, I was like, I don't want to do this no more. I'm good. And I started finding different ways to occupy my time for the better. But did y'all ever have that, or is it just me? But you've been in therapy for a long time. So.
Yeah, like off and on. Like when I went as a kid, it was off and on, and then didn't really go teen to young adult years. But over the past, I would say I've been going consistently now over the past like probably about 3-4 years. And I think it was just to try to get a better understanding of myself and some of the reactions that I was having to like just interactions at work and relationship stuff. And I was just like, I need to see what's going on here and make sure I'm normal, or like
that takes
normal for me.
that takes a lot. He quoted it from somebody, but Cornel West said it's harder to explore the dark shadows of your life than it is to fight on the battlefield. And that it's tough to jump back and be like, hold on, maybe it is me. Like there's so many scenarios where it's like, okay, it's the third time, you know, this relationship ended this way.
Right.
And, you know, common denominator, like who's the person, but I don't know. It's tough. It can be tough sometimes. Did you ever have something like that?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. My very first one had to be nothing was really shaking for me or changing for me to progress professionally. Obviously, I got to change something. In the midst of that, I'm trying to date and going about it all wrong, and everything keeps ending. And I'm trying to figure out why, and then obviously I'm the why.
Yeah.
It ain't all. And then granted, dating, sometimes
Yeah,
it's a man,
yeah.
sometimes it's a man. But most of the time, it's like,
yeah.
okay, if it is these men, okay, what about me is choosing these men? So it like taking that accountability, even with my finances, experiences, I got to do something different. And I'd like to think that I'm solution oriented.
Right.
I need like a plan, and I've tried a few therapists because it's like dating. Still, you gotta try a few.
It is.
That's what I was gonna ask.
A lot of
y'all,
people don't
how do
realize
y'all-
that you do have to try a few.
You gotta try a few.
Yeah.
I've tried black, I've tried white, I've tried male, I've tried female.
Which one works for you?
So I like that because I'm solution oriented. Men are usually solution oriented too.
Okay. Interesting.
And so I've had female therapists who are more like that shoulder, like that vent session, and I don't necessarily. I didn't think I benefited from venting. I learned now that it does help me. So it's just I learn more about what I need from a therapist every time I try one. Like right now, I think I got my girl,
Right.
but it took me a few.
It's definitely. I've heard it.
Yeah, it
Definitely
takes a
like
few.
dating.
Yeah.
So these are things I've heard. I'm actually glad that I have two black women here because I have to ask. So, have you ever experienced when you're talking to a therapist, let's say about men, and it gets to a point where they're like just siding with you, and like, oh yeah, like, and it, I guess it's supposed to sound like is it supposed to be like a girlfriend like type thing or no? Like they kind of like they start bringing their own personal stuff and then
No,
it's not supposed to be like that.
Up.
It's not supposed to be like
Okay.
that.
I don't know I've been going to my same therapist for like 3-4 years, and I don't really know anything about her personal life. Like, and I've seen her virtually, like throughout COVID and stuff, and she was I think the time, and she was like pregnant during COVID or whatever, and I didn't even know until she sent out an email because like we're on the video, so you only see like this. So like she sent out an email to everybody and was like, hey, I'm going on maternity leave, blah blah blah, and I was like, wait a minute, I've been talking to you once a month for
What you mean maternity leave?
So like no personal lines as far as she's concerned, because she know all my business, but no personal lines are crossed on her part.
Do you guys usually and of course you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you guys usually share everything, or do you share things that you're struggling with, or do you also share things that you figured out?
It depends on the therapist. Like the one I have now, I've been seeing her for about a year. My first appointment was maybe in 2017.
Okay.
I've told her stuff that I have not ever told the other ones that I've tried. And I may have even had more sessions with them. It's just sometimes you can feel that connection, just like dating, just like trying to find friends.
Wow.
Sometimes you can feel that connection, and sometimes you're like, are they going to get it? Or, it just depends. For me, it just depends. Like, I trust this one. And maybe it's because she's a black woman, and maybe it's because we're like kind of around the same age even, which is odd. But
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's like, I don't know, I just trust her more. I can feel that warmth and like her feedback, and I know that she can help me, and I didn't feel that with the other ones.
What does a bad experience feel like? Like you don't feel like you're being listened to? How does that feel like when you're choosing a therapist? I need this information because
if you feel judged, like you shouldn't feel like they're judging.
I didn't even think about that.
It should all be very like objective.
So it's difficult because if you call somebody out on something, it's like you're insensitive, or you're not empathetic enough. But I swear sometimes people are using mental health as a crutch. And I just look at them like, oh, there's people that are really depressed. But then you can, I also feel like if they are saying something like that, there is something wrong with them because they feel like I don't know, I feel like it's a never ending, like, whatever, but.
Is it safe to say that I know people like that too? I know so many. I mean, even eighth graders who they rely so heavily on the fact that they have anxiety or depression, and they probably very well have those things,
right?
And they just use that almost to their detriment. They don't want, so it almost is like it definitely you have to have a level of maturity associated with that. Like, okay, you have this going on, but you want to change it. You have to want to do that. And sometimes, I don't know, maybe I was watching a TV show, maybe I read it. Sometimes people would rather have this to blame their actions on than actually seeking help and realizing that what they need to blame is this trauma or this,
like some
or
type
even
of like projection or displacement. I don't know. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
But man, that's a tough one, especially like you mentioned maturity, like with kids. Did you like? I don't know if I knew what it was or not, but like as a kid, did you experience like, depression, or like did you experience like stress or anxiety or anything like that, like to the point where you knew what it was past just being sad?
No,
I don't think so.
I think I just thought it was sadness.
Yeah.
And then I kind of feel like I was always told, like, people get sad. It's normal, and stress and depression is normal, but to kind of navigate what exactly you're feeling is also kind of, that's hard when you're younger,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure why. I feel like with the whole reason why I want to do mental health is because when you're not addressing the things that like you're going through or whatever the case, it's really a testament to like your growth, like if you're cool with being how you are, then it is what it is. But if not, it's really tough to find that thing that's really bothering you, but I'm trying to think if the trauma that you experience is, I don't want to say like generational, but
it might be case
I don't know
if it is. Like, it may be case, like I think in my case, whether the older generations in my family want to admit it or not, I know that they went through some of the same things that I did. And then because I went to therapy, and literally this therapist now is the only person I've ever talked about childhood trauma with. And a part of the reason is because I may have not trusted these people or felt comfortable enough. But also another part is that I am not comfortable enough with what happened yet for me to come head on and face, because again, I just repressed it. So now I got to really like say it out loud. Like, it actually happened. I got to acknowledge that it happened. So I think that's the same thing that a lot of people, or most people, even deal with. You don't want to come to the actualization that happened, so you just pretend it never did. So you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to go to a therapist where they can figure it out, because I remember my therapist told me it's almost as if I painted my own like scarlet letter on my chest, like, because I think that people are going to see that shame or that I have for myself. Like, they're going to see it and they're going to label me. And I think that's what it is.
We're the most critical of ourselves all the time.
We're our own worst enemies.
Man,
It's like
all
the
the
truest statement.
time,
Yes.
man. And then I feel like, okay, so this is another question. Did y'all feel any, because a lot of people were apparently, did y'all feel any like stress or anxiety when you were like in the pandemic?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Really?
I mean, mine wasn't because like I couldn't go anywhere, because I'm fine like chilling at home.
I love it.
Around my things.
Yeah.
With my animals.
Right,
I'm fine.
right.
But it was more so just the general climate of the world at the time, and the United States specifically, with like Trump and all the protest stuff. And then you had like, white coworkers checking in like, are you okay? And that kind of stuff. Like, that was more so what gave me anxiety, was just like the like larger social stuff going on.
Okay.
Not the
necessarily
pandemic.
but everything
specifically.
associated with it.
Yeah, everything that happened because we were sitting down for so long.
I don't know how deep we should get into this, but how do I put this diplomatically? Do people of non-color oftentimes give you, like, is it a mental health that, like, a new type of mental health that you're in now that you're an adult? Because maybe as you're a kid, you didn't really, this kid just don't like me, but you experience other stuff as an adult. Does that have any effect on you as a, like, you know, just mental health wise? Maybe the guilt, the ignorance, the...
I mean, for me, it's usual, like, generally out of ignorance based, like, microaggression-y type shit that you run into it, that we all run into it from time to time.
Yeah.
Is that another thing that we kind of just repress? Like,
Yes, it is,
how they
because if I take the time to respond to every time that happens, like, I'm not gonna get any work done. I'm just gonna be upset and pissed off all the time. I need to actually focus on my job. You know, I don't know, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely one of those things where, like, ugh, just another annoyance.
And I feel like I sometimes have to laugh it off. Like, am I in a Dave Chappelle sketch or something?
Yeah.
You
Like,
can't be serious all the time.
It's ridiculous. Like, I had one time where this particular person sent me a picture of somebody's child. And, doesn't this look like so-and-so's child? Like, that we mutually know. It looks nothing like the child. But I was just like, is this because...
Maybe the same race?
Yeah, because they're black. But, you know, it's just stuff like that where it's like, man, it takes all of me not to get upset about that kind of stuff. And then, you know, the news doesn't help. And but it's the experiences. The news is kind of just like, it really sucks. Like, that's a whole nother conversation.
I take breaks. Like,
listen.
I take actual, like, I won't, there are times where I'm like, I'm not doing social media right now. Like, I'm not doing the news today, just for my own well-being. Because, like, same as the little microaggressions, you know, that we might run into at work or while out, like, if I focus on everything that's going on in the news and social all the time, I'm not going to get anything else done.
That's another thing. How do you guys set boundaries? Like, for social media, you stop going on social media.
Yeah.
But, like, do you have to block some people sometimes? Like
if that's what it takes.
Yes.
You
got to.
Not necessarily, like, them reaching out to you, just the stuff that they post.
Yeah.
Like, man, you got me
can,
feeling
like, temporarily mute you.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Like, temporarily.
You
You can temporarily mute people?
Yeah.
Oh, I just go for the block. Okay.
I mean, if
I
it's
agree.
extreme, then you could block. But
Okay.
yeah, you could mute people. Like, okay, you're doing too much right now.
Is there a time limit on it? Like, can you mute them for, like...
I feel like it says, like, snooze 4, and then you can change
Wow.
you can snooze people.
Changing the game. But yeah, like, do you have to do that with people, with social media, with the news? A lot of people say they don't watch the news because it's depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you right now, social media is way more depressing than the news sometimes.
I mean, there are certain things, like, there are certain people that I won't talk to about certain things because I know about what they post about on social media.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I have, you know, not to get too, you know, into stuff, but, like, I have family members that are fully into the COVID conspiracy stuff.
Oh,
and
my God.
the vaccination conspiracy stuff and all that. And I'm like, okay, so I know when we get together, we're not going to talk about anything related to that because I'm not going to have that argument.
You have
with
to
you.
protect your peace.
Exactly.
You have to protect
Like,
your
you're not going
peace.
to convince me that COVID came from 5G, and I'm not going to convince you that it didn't. So let's
not talk about
leave it alone.
Let's not
Fine.
talk about it. Yeah.
But that's a real thing you have to do. I find myself sometimes, like, there are situations, whether it's like with the homies, whether it's family, and there's some situations where I can't talk about it. Like, I'd rather just not talk about it. And, you know, Liv will talk about something, and I'll just stop talking about it. And she's like, you don't think? I was like, look, I just know myself.
Right.
And I know, like, I might, my forehead might start twitching or something. Like, I know myself, and more importantly, I know my body and, like, how I, like, react to that kind of stuff. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And sometimes you got to tell people, like, look, we can't talk about this.
Yeah, and I
agree to
literally do
disagree
that.
is my favorite phrase. And it's, man, that saves a lot of people a lot of time with me, and it sucks, but you know, sometimes you just gotta protect the peace.
I want to be a neutral party while y'all talk about it.
Yeah, man. That's really, I don't know, it's just really unfortunate, but it is what it is. But before we like wrap up, I kind of wanted to ask y'all if you could give anybody any advice on how to, you know, have some type of form of self-care, or, you know, like what works for you mental health wise, how to start. People that haven't started, like, you know, that journey in mental health, what would y'all tell them? That's a tough one.
It is. That's a good one.
I can start.
Yeah,
music.
You start.
Music is a really good one for me, and I'm kind of diving into a little more than what it should be, but beats per minute matters too. Like how fast a song is, how slow a song is. Like, you know, if you're in a really, really heated state and you're listening to like some DMX or something like that, it's probably, you know, it depends on what song, but it's probably not the best to, you know, like I listen to a lot of like Mick Jenkins. He's very chill, like lo-fi, you know. I also, like I said earlier, sports is really good. I like to sit outside. And I don't have my like, you know, like I just like to sit outside and just like look up at the sky and just chill. You know, that's the best time for me. Like I love to reflect. You know, I've done some wild things in my life, and I'm just like, wow, remember that? And you know, and then I just
how much you've grown.
Chill, yeah. You know, like I always say, well, I started saying this year, but last year was like the best year of my life. So I kind of just like to reflect on that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's important to know where to start, because what you can say, Jasmine might not, you know, like start that way. Like everybody's different. What Jasmine might say, you might not start with. So, you know, there's something that somebody's gonna pick up where like, oh, I never thought about that, or you know. So, if you guys have anything, it's cool. If not, you know, it is what it is.
I think as far as starting, just figuring out just like one thing that you enjoy doing that just like brings you joy for whatever reason, and it could be, you know, something as small as like cooking a meal for yourself, or you know, and I do too. Like I love to just kind of be in the kitchen, chop it, whatever. You know, start just, you know, incorporating little things that like bring you joy, that you're just like, you can kind of turn your mind off a little bit and just kind of focus on these little things. Reading a book for 10 minutes, that, you know, just little stuff like that, and just taking those little tiny steps, little self-care steps like that will make it easier to like incorporate things like that. And also just keeping perspective about things, because I have to remind myself a lot of times, like, I am not, I mean, I should have said this at the very beginning. I am not a mental health professional. I'm just a person who has a mental health professional. But, I mean, I have to remind myself as somebody who works in production, like, I'm not, like, curing cancer. You know, I care about my work and I want to do great work. But at the end of the day, like, in the grand scheme of things, like there are a lot of things that are bigger and more important than this one little thing that I might be focusing on at the time. So just kind of keeping perspective about, you know, what truly matters.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Keandra, what about you?
I definitely I learned more. So my whole journey of self-care has been just keeping an open mindset, and then I think back in college, I read A Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes.
Okay.
And so my approach, what started me on my self-care journey and my healing journey was like the same reason she started. Just, you never are going to know. I'm so like, Mississippi is so, yes, you do what you do, you hang what you hang with, you eat what you eat, and that's it. And so me moving here is like a culture shock even. I didn't even grow up around one white person in my whole high school. Wow. So like, I don't really know what I truly like because I've never been around that. So I challenged myself to just saying yes to everything. I scuba dove Dove.
We'll go with it.
Scuba dove, sure,
Dove.
sure. I don't
With
know.
sharks, and I would have never done that shit
no.
had I been with my friend. You know, like I learn more the more I just do it. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna try that, and so I just try things and I keep an open mind. I've tried new food. I actually feel like last year was the best year of my life too, because I just tried new food. I went to new places. I went
Traveling by
traveled
yourself, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I
Renaissance
just did
woman.
it, and I every time I do something rambunctious, I learn something new about myself. Like I might not like
That's
that
cool
now,
though.
you know?
Like that's one of my. This is gonna sound stupid. That's one of my favorite pastimes. Is learn new stuff about myself.
I mean,
right?
you learn something. If you're doing it right, you learn. You're supposed to keep learning about
Yeah.
yourself because you keep changing. The world's keep changing constantly. You should not. You should be too, but
You're gonna
you know,
grow.
You're changing.
At
a
least
little,
you're
a little
supposed to
bit.
be, right?
Yeah, you should be growing.
You're changing physically.
Yeah.
You're probably changing mentally too. So
You're supposed to. Some people ain't.
Some people
Right?
don't.
Some people-
Yeah,
you're
some,
right.
people, some
Some
people look at you crazy because you have and they
Yeah,
haven't, which is a
yeah.
whole different thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I do appreciate y'all sharing like some stuff that I just learned about you guys. So that's really dope. I think one thing we could take away from this is that self-care is not linear. Like, you know, mental health is something that we all need to, in a sense, deal with, but there's different ways to deal with it, whether it's going to therapy, whether it's, you know, listening to music, whether it's self-care days. That's really dope. So I appreciate y'all for coming. Appreciate y'all for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I usually have this this one question. It's a tough one.
Oh boy.
It's a tough one, but I feel like you guys can answer it pretty well. If we didn't like address our mental health, if no one ever addressed our mental health in the world, what would that world look like?
The end of humanity.
Basically,
From chaos.
it's people just go get some help. That's all I gotta say.
Talk
You
to
can have
somebody.
God and
Yes,
God
you
and
can.
have both.
Yes.
Maybe God sent you that.
Yeah,
We'll get into
maybe
it.
God sent you a therapist.
You're right.
You feel me? So
Yeah.
yeah, man.
God gave us therapists. Yes.
There you
That's
go.
what he did. Okay.
But yeah, so this is For All We Know, the mental health episode, and be yourself because everyone else is taken.